Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Strength, Yoga, and Freedom podcast or YouTube channel, wherever you're watching or listening to this from. My name is Justin. We are, oh my gosh, into part 2 of this conversation. Wasn't part 1 amazing? We talked about so many things, from the stopping words to the word beginner. We talked about chronic pain. And we talked about these conditional beliefs. We're going to talk about a lot of things in this next one, about working with people, some more stuff on narcissism, stuff about being gay versus straight, and some relationship stuff. That's a big one in this. And also maybe some insecurity. We've got some great topics for you. This is a conversation that we had without any kind of script. We didn't have any type of outline that we were going to follow. We just started talking, and I was so happy with how everything came out and the result that just poured out from our hearts. So I hope you enjoy that as well, and then take anything from this conversation that you might have even taken from part 1 and add to it to this part, or something brand new, because you deserve any tools or tricks or tips to help you live a happier life. You really do deserve that, and we're here to help you along that road. So let's get to part 2 of our episode with Tavi. Enjoy it. I know you will.
Well, I think I was actually going to mention boundaries once you set them.
Please go right ahead.
I was actually just going to mention that once you set boundaries after these experiences, it's so much easier because you've gone through that fear of rejection, fear of all that fear that you go through when you experience these things, and you create boundaries because you're no longer accepting that behavior from people, or you start recognizing it, and you have boundaries, and it's it doesn't even have to go up. It can just be this way because it's already established. Yeah. You don't have to keep, raising it with a certain person. But if you have a boundary against a certain person and they keep, trying to invade that, then that's where you need to push them further away from you.
I agree.
I don't feel like it's fair for me to personally have to put more and more boundaries on myself. I would rather just push the other, opposing force away from me. And that's a boundary. And this is a hard boundary that I refuse. We've both been in relationships in the past that, a person has taken so much from us, where we were unsure. It left us, I'm sure, I'm not trying to speak for you, but I'm, in conversation that we've had and stuff like that personally, somebody constantly leaving that carrot. It's that dangling carrot of affection. Yeah. Once I just get that carrot, I'll get what I need. I'll get all the love I need if I could just get to this carrot. And they keep it dangled in front of you because they want you attached without their commitment. And that to me is just, it's not fair. And if you're in a relationship with a dangling carrot, who are you anymore at that point? You're focused on this carrot. You lose so much of yourself.
And I want to say too that we're not just talking about like relationships with people of our own age. I had 2 narcissistic parents, both of my parents, narcissistic. And when your parents, when you're in and it doesn't have to be a parent, or it could be another guardian or an older adult figure when you're a child. But when you grow up in that environment, you don't understand how much of your self-worth gets robbed. I mean, my parents used to say things to me like, you're lucky that you were born. You're lucky that you're mine. You're lucky I don't leave you. You're lucky that the military hasn't drafted you. You should be afraid for your life. Like, those are things that you don't say to children, because
absolutely not. I'm so sorry you experienced that.
Oh, well, thank you. But it has taken me into my adulthood to understand what makes me tick. I think I've shared this with you before, but my dad, who's no longer alive, my dad died, I don't know, what is this, 2024? So he died like 20 years, it's been like 20 years now. But, he used to say when we would go to, do you remember Geauga Lake that used to be up near Cleveland?
Yes.
Remember?
Mm-hmm.
So that was like the
Mm-hmm.
only like place I really ever went as a kid. My mother and my aunt would drag us there against their wills, because they were, they had other things to do, which I don't know what those were. But anyway, so they used to drag us there, and they would make it known that they were dragging us there because, they were doing us a favor. So my dad used to say, "Oh, are you going there with all the degenerates, the degenerate people?" And then I used to think that going to a theme park made me that type of like that word, I was that word. But as you grow up and you realize like, oh my gosh, and I started to see over the past, and this is recent, 10 years, 8 years, this advent of YouTube and people creating content with roller coaster videos and people who are just like me, who love roller coasters and who like, you know what I mean, Tavi, like the things that you like. And when you start to understand that other people like them too, and you start to relate to them, you realize you were fucked when you were a kid in those situations or by whatever relationship you were in. So
Yeah.
for me, I am grateful for my parents. I'm very grateful for them. And here's why, because they taught me a very valuable lesson: how never to behave, how never to behave. And so now I have these boundaries, and I want to talk about that. Boundaries are not, like you said, they're not for other people. They're for you. They are for you.
Exactly.
They are for you. They are your rules. They are, and that goes back to what we started talking about, these stopping words. Everything we're talking about here in this conversation is stemming from one meeting in a 200-hour yoga teacher training. So that word yoga could have been a stopping word, but here we are years later talking to you to help you change your life in a positive direction. So I can't see why a yoga would be a stopping word, because it means so much more.
It's hard. Yeah, it's because that perspective is changed.
Yes.
Yoga doesn't mean poses anymore,
Yeah.
as to where before that's all it was. And now we have the mentality of yoga. And I just have to say something, Justin. Good for you for having the courage to speak up about your experience.
Thank you.
That's not easy. You're welcome. That's a very vulnerable thing to share, especially on a, platform that's going to be, widely shared and everything like that. So good for you for having the courage and,
Thank you.
Overcoming that fear of talking about it. You're welcome.
Well, I thank you. I have to say, some of you who have listened or watched me, you've heard me say things before about my past, and I've made episodes about my past and my growing up. I'm not ashamed to talk about my past. I'm not ashamed. I don't care who hears it. And the reason I don't care is because we're talking about my truth here. We're talking about me being an authentic person. No one can take that from me. No one can take that from me. So this is who I am. I am a theme park loving, travel loving, physically active, caring, compassionate, and loving person. And if you don't like that person, then go hang out with somebody else. I don't care. But do you know how long it's taken me to get to that point? My gosh. And I know you've been there too. I know you have.
Oh yeah, that decade-long relationship when I was very young and impressionable when I started that, it was not an easy experience to get through.
Yeah.
So, the whole first part of, adult, I also had a child very early in my life, and that made my life more difficult in ways, but also so much more blessed because, it's a lot of heartaches to have when you make choices that you don't fully understand in those formative years. And then having somebody so oppressing in your life, you get this perspective of, well, I'm just not worth much more. And for a long time you believe that, and you get Stockholm syndrome in that. And the fear becomes greater than your own life at that
point. The reality,
yes. The fear was bigger than me. The fear of surviving this relationship was so great that I had gotten help I say I left 4 times, and one time, the first time I had help. I went to the help. I went and spoke with law enforcement, and they were ready to help me get out of that situation. And I said, no, you can't. He's they're going to, as soon as they find out that I've been here. So it's like, I went there for help, freaked out when they were actually ready to help me, because I had let the fear consume me that I could have been out of it so much sooner than I was. But I was so afraid. And that's what these people do. They keep you in this bubble of control where they manipulate, covert control, manipulated my own thoughts. I felt brainwashed. I really felt brainwashed. And it was just that I needed to take that step and remember who I am, who I was. And I always was like, I'll never be that woman. I'll never be battered and abused or emotionally or physically. No one's ever. You think that. You think that.
You do.
Until you're in that situation and you don't know how to get out. Because that's not taught. That's not taught to you on a regular basis. It's not taught to you. So
and this is newer too. Like the narcissism stuff is newer. I mean, it really is in the past, I don't know, decade. I mean, it's not that old. I mean, I know it's been around, but the study of it and the awareness of it is getting bigger and bigger.
Awareness, yes.
The awareness.
Yes.
Because you and I, if this was 10 years ago, we would have never been like, well, what's going on here? What's happening here?
Yeah.
And you feel like it's normal.
Yeah. Yeah, you feel like it's just your norm that you have to accept because you don't understand the more, or, that the steps to take, that even though they're difficult and uncomfortable, I had to sit in my own discomfort in order to seek comfort, and so when you're talking about having gratitude towards your parents, and I'm so sorry you had that experience growing up, but the discomfort is what brings us comfort when we seek it. We have to apply that motion, the body in motion, and stay in motion and moving forward in order to get through that discomfort, because otherwise you're just going to keep sitting in it and you're just never going to get to that point of understanding your true strength, your true power, and your true form of who you are.
And that is so critical. And I want to circle back to that in a minute. And I also want to bring this up.
Sure.
It's not just, we're also not just talking here, everybody, about parents or partners. People you work with are also narcissistic. And I have another news flash for all of you. And I think today on my social media it went out. Maybe it's tomorrow. I don't remember. But the people you work with, everybody, are not your friends. I'm just telling you that right now. They are not your friends. And I'm not saying that the people you work with, you are not going to get a friendship, maybe one or two or a few, but the majority of the people you work with are not your friends. And that is a really hard thing for people to hear, because the people that you work with have intentions, and they may not be the same intentions as yours. And when you meet people at work, that's where you're meeting. That's your common thread, work. So when you meet people at work and that's your common thread, then that's where you're building the relationship from, work. You're not building it because you are going through a personal crisis with another. You know what I mean? Like, you're not building it that way. You're not building it based on your purpose in life. You're not building it based on your goals, your dreams, your ambitions, your purpose, your fulfillment. You're not building it off that. You're building it off of a shared work experience. There's nothing wrong with having colleagues and acquaintances at work that you are friendly with and that you're polite with and that you might go out and maybe have a drink or have whatever. But you have to understand something. Not everybody at work is your friend. You and I have worked with people who are extremely narcissistic, who manipulated a ton of things around us. And that was very uncomfortable. We have also dealt with people in our lives separately at other places we've worked with in a professional capacity that are narcissistic, and they can make your life a living hell. So I just want to bring that up. And I want to circle this back to what you just said about how this all goes back to that purpose again, and how it all goes back to finding out your true self. If you are working on figuring out what makes you tick and what makes the blood in your veins pump and what lights your fire up every day, you are just operating from your heart. And of course, you're going to have mistakes because you're a human. But for the most part, you're just going about your day with your heart. And there will be other people that are going to get in your way. And they are teachers to get in your way, to teach you these lessons, which stinks. But like, you go back to my parents, you know, if it wouldn't have been for them, I may not be here talking about this now, because maybe I would have had a, you know, we could call it, quote, normal, or maybe you might say loving upbringing. But the reason that you have purpose and the reason you start a journey of whatever it is so that you can find what makes you tick and you could pour love out to other people. You could call that yoga. You can call that, you know, what you could call it whatever you want. But that's the whole thing for me. And that's why I started this podcast. It was to take what I had learned, grow a purpose, figure out my purpose, and share that with others in hopes that they can do the same.
Absolutely. It's definitely inspiring to be able to be a part of this, you know, however often we do it and everything like that, because it's something that I see you get to work through. And when you're talking about moving through your heart space, and that is where, when you meet people in these catalysts of places, let's call them jobs, let's call them you know, schools or whatever.
Yeah, another one, school. Yep.
But when you do operate from your heart space, that's where your connections to your best friends and people who can remain in your life, when you're operating from your heart space. That's how you and I really feel like, because we were both authentically in the same place and open with our hearts. We had no idea it would manifest in the ways that it did, but it was in those moments of vulnerability and living from our heart space that really brought us together. And I think because I do have to say, I still have a very dear friend of mine. She's like my work wife when I worked at this one place. And that place was full of narcissists. They brought in the narcissistic HR person, ruined our lives. But her and I cared about the people. We cared about helping our patients and clients.
I have to say this too. So hold your thought, because this is important for everybody who's listening. Anyone in HR is not your friend. I'm just telling you that right now. They are not looking out for you. Okay, go ahead. They're not.
Exactly. And that was a hard lesson that I had to learn the hard way, because you think you can, you know, be authentic or vulnerable with HR, and they find a way to, you know, let you know their power, basically.
Yeah, because they have one job, which is to protect the company, not you.
Exactly.
That's their job.
So
I wanted to say, I like that you said that you brought up that example of having that work wife that made it out of that job that was full of other people. Because again, it's not that you're not going to meet friends at your job. It's just that you need to realize that not everybody is your friend. They're just not.
Exactly.
And you need to remember that.
Exactly. We were both operating from the same heart space, and that's why her and I are still dear friends to this day, because, you know, I still call her my work wife, because, you know, we worked well together because we had this same goal, same intention. We were there to help people. We were there to make a difference.
Yes.
We weren't there to cater to money.
Or gossip.
Yes, money, gossip. No.
Yeah, and coffee, having cute coffees. Just because I bring you a cute coffee at work or a sweet little iced tea, that doesn't mean that you and I are friends. It's a nice gesture. But, like, you need to connect on a deeper level. There's deeper than that.
Yeah. I think it's a choice to leave your coworkers at that level of camaraderie. You guys are in it together. You're in the trenches together. And outside of that, if you don't have a connection at that hard space, leave it there.
I agree.
There. They don't come up, because this happens, like, in my past, I've had, jobs where, man, they really just bothered me. They really upset me with what they said. And it just really took the rest of my day. I brought it home with me, and that wasn't
Yeah.
fair. I
No.
was projecting that, and I don't like that. Leave it.
No.
Once you clock out, find that way to leave it there, and it's no longer a worry.
I agree.
Especially in those jobs that you have to work until you're able to find your purpose, you have to find a way of leaving it there, because when you bring it home, I had to learn this with my children. I had to stop bringing it home. I would come
Yeah.
home so upset that I would miss opportunities with them. And I regret that. I
Yeah.
fully regret that. I didn't get to give them the attention they deserved
Yeah.
and needed from me, because I was a stressed out single mom with 4
Yeah.
kids,
Yeah.
like my focus was, I need to make this much money so that
Yep.
we can pay bills. And then I was so stressed, I didn't have time to give them or focus on them, that it took away from them. And that's not fair.
It's not.
It's not fair.
You're right. And when you bring things home, it's unfair to the people that are at home. It's just unfair.
Yeah.
There's people too, when you're talking about when you're talking about places you work, or really anywhere, especially when you're in a place of work. When you're in a place of work, you have to understand that you are not the owner of that place either. You are a employee, which means you are receiving a paycheck to perform a task. Or if you are the person who's kind of self-employed, but you also are self-employed through, like maybe you're an independent contractor, you still have certain rules you have to follow. And people get
yes.
Yeah, and they get all bent out of shape when they don't like a policy that's being enacted by the owner. Well, then you need to pick a different job, because if you stay in that position like that, you're going to have so much resentment. If I couldn't say this enough, I can't say this enough, but you have to, when you're working for someone else, you do have to have a tiny bit of people pleasing, because you are expected to perform a task, because you're trading your time for money. That's just the way it is at the base. But I love what you said when you're talking about, yes, you're with your coworkers and you're in the trenches, and that happens at a lot of jobs, especially when everybody has to work together. But yeah. It's all about that heart space. If you are operating from your heart space, and I've learned this the hard way, then when you go to work, or when you perform a task or a job, you're going to do it with integrity. And when you do it with integrity, you don't have to worry about the rules of the organization, because you're literally being integral with the rules. You're saying, these are his rules, her rules as the owner, and I'm going to follow those rules. There were so many. You and I have worked for the same owner of something before. I've worked for other small business owners. I've worked for big corporations before. Every one of them has had different rules and regulations. But one of the things I have never done and never will do is break that rule or regulation just because I don't like it. You can't do stuff like that, because again, let's talk about that control. You're going back into that, like, weaving in and out of this control stuff. You want to control things like that, you got to start your own business, and then you can run it any way you want. But but working with people is a big bump when it comes to the road that people are on. They hit a bump, because I see people now who are so ensconced with what everyone else is doing, or are so ensconced with their social media, and have to comment on everything, and have to be everything, and have to see everything, and have to, when you operate like that, where are you? Where'd you go? Because you're worried about what everybody else is doing. And there are people you're going to encounter that are like that. So all of this ties back to that same thing we've been talking about. Being a beginner, being open, having the heart space, all of that good stuff from the get-go. From the get-go.
Yes, from the get-go. Sometimes, because not everyone is able to operate from their heart space fully. Sometimes it's an inkling. Sometimes that beginner and operating from that heart space is that tiny little act of courage of being the beginner. Because when you talk about operating from the heart space, there's a way to start and there's a way to fully operate, because it can take a minute. It's a vulnerable feeling, and it can take a minute for someone to be comfortable with deciding on where they're at with it. So I just wanted to make because of my chakra and background in that nature, that sometimes it's too vulnerable for someone to be able to fully embrace their heart space, to know how to do it. But sometimes it takes a person like you or me to be able to move forward so that they can see what that looks like.
And
if more people can see what that looks like, then we won't be such a slave, to the patriarchy, or
that's right. Call it. And I think that's a really, really great point you just made, is you are ultimately a teacher too. We are all teachers. So the more you operate from your heart space, the more you are showing other people what that, like, your true authentic self, and how your courage can inspire others. But you have to be a teacher and you have to be a student. And if you are just a student, you're just stuck. And you could be a student all your life. You could be just learning, but then there has to be some type of application to what you're learning. You need to apply something. And you also could be a teacher all your life, but if all you do is teach and you don't learn, and this is the case and you could bring it back to yoga, when there's people who teach yoga who never practice yoga. I don't even know how anybody could do that. I cannot, in my brain, I cannot comprehend that. Because to me, I have to be able to feel it in order to talk about it, I
feel like an authentic teacher is practicing what they're preaching, and also willing to still be a student.
Yeah.
If you're considering yourself a master, what do you have to relate to the student?
Yeah.
Like if you put yourself on this pedestal of being the master, well, you just have knowledge to bestow. How can you relate to the student that is, how can you relate to them on the level that, you're going to have different students, and some learn physically, some learn mentally, some learn by looking, and, each one of them is different. And if you're just a master on your pedestal, how are you going to relate to being able to teach to that mentality? Because I don't have my mentality, I feel for myself, is a difficult one for people to understand how to teach me, because I comprehend in different ways.
Yeah, I'm the same.
Yeah, I feel like I'm not a textbook learner. I have to read it and apply it in my own way in order to comprehend it on the level of being able to reverberate it, if that makes sense.
Correct. It does.
Okay. So if I was just to consider myself a master and not practice what I've been teaching, what am I giving that's authentic? And are my students even going to be successful? Because what is the point of being a teacher if your students aren't even going to be successful? I don't understand it.
Yeah, then there's either there's a no intention there, or there's a behind the scenes intention.
Right. There's
and there
always
it is.
That covert control.
There it is again. There it is again. Mm-hmm. It's that control. And that is a big deal in yoga, as both of us know. The more you study some of the yoga philosophy, and I know that I base a lot of what I talk about on this podcast in yoga philosophy. And I try to make it as real world as possible, because we are living in the real world here. We're not living in the times that the yoga sutras and everything were written. That it's just a different time, and you have to adapt. So in going back to that and looking at back in the yoga philosophies and talking about letting go and control, letting go is a big deal. We deserve to be celebrated. We deserve to be honored. We deserve to be we deserve to have this journey without other people trying to control it. Inspiration is different. Yes. But controlling is It's a slippery slope, and we all do it because we're all humans. And human beings, we need to control because we need to survive. But there's certain things you have to let go of.
And exactly, when you think of letting go of certain things, what is the control for? Is it a control out of necessity to, have a safe environment for, your responsibilities like children, pets, things of that nature? Is it that kind of control, or is it a manipulative kind of control where you're trying to stop someone from getting enjoyment because you're not able to?
Because you're
not able to control that. So like in past relationships, I wasn't allowed or able to do things because that person wasn't allowed or able to do things. Or even me going and having lunch with a friend was because they weren't there, automatically assumed into, so I wasn't allowed to do that. And they controlled my actions by dangling that carrot and stopping me from being able to go out and enjoy lunch with a friend just because it was a friend and there was nothing more to it.
Yes, I want to comment on that because this is what brings us back to this loving and being a teacher thing. Because what you mentioned a minute or two ago about how you're, when you're you're the teacher and you're leading by example. One of the things that I do in my life that is difficult to do is if I am friends with someone and their significant other or their partner does not like that I am communicating with them, they think that there's a sexual thing happening or whatever it is, then the relationship that I have with my friend will change. I have to set a boundary because if I don't set that boundary, two things are happening. One, I am going to open myself up to pain, which is unneeded. It's unnecessary pain. And two, I am not living my authentic self to show others what that really means. And to me, I believe that if you are in a relationship with someone who does not like who you're hanging around or tries to control that, then you need to look at that relationship. But I'm not going to sit here and go, you know what, Tavi? You should take a look at your relationship with your boyfriend or your friend or this or that because blah, 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 blah. He's this, he's that. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to say, Tavi, from now on, we won't be having lunch. I feel uncomfortable by what has happened. Please, we're not going to text. And so I'm going to need a chance to kind of back up and take some space because this is making me feel uncomfortable. It's all about me, not about what you're doing or what the other person is doing. And that hopefully is me saying, hey, look, I do love you, but I have to set this boundary because I love you and I don't want to be hurt anymore. And I hope that makes you make like, oh, gee. But sometimes when you're in those relationships, man, you are blind to that stuff. So
you don't see the red flags because you're in it. You're too close to it. But
someone needs to point that out, without being a dick about it.
Right. So in a situation like that, I mean, this has happened to you and I before. We've gone out to lunch and a past person has accused me of us, and I'm like, that's not really possible. Totally different situation here. And
and I'm gay too, so I'm not interested in women.
Exactly. I don't want to be the one to say that.
Oh, you could say it, but other men don't always. Other men think that, I don't know. Other men might think, well, what am I going to do? Just turn straight tomorrow? I mean, that's not going to happen. But anyway. Go ahead.
Yeah. That's exactly my point. And it's like these people. There's a difference in a relationship. You and I, of course, it's known you're a gay man, I'm a straight female. We're not ever going to have anything on the side outside of our own personal relationships. That's just never going to happen. We're always going to remain friends and close friends. And if someone was to accuse me, like in the past that they have, that's up to me to say, look, this is my friend and I am not this is my dear friend. This is not, you can meet them if you want to. But this is a friendship that I would really like to not lose because of your insecurity. And that would be up to me as a friend to say that. And then also let you know, hey, by the way, my partner's insecure. Would you be okay with either meeting them or, vice versa? And you could say, I'm not comfortable with that and I need some space. And I could respect that and say, I'll give you whatever space you need, but like covert control, like we were talking about, would be me trying to control you and saying, I need you to meet him, or not respecting that boundary because it's not fulfilling my needs.
Or don't text me past 5 p.m. because if he sees it, I'm going to get in trouble. Then you're trying to control my behavior, and I haven't done anything.
Exactly. That's the thing. And it's different. I do have to say one more point of partners saying it, aside from two different, sexual orientations. If I had a person that made my partner uncomfortable, like a fiance, my fiance, if he was uncomfortable with a friend that wasn't a gay male, and I had a friend and, they maybe kind of liked me, I think that part is something where that would have to be respected. You would have to say, this is not an appropriate friendship anymore.
Agreed.
And that is where it's okay for your partner to say, this person makes me uncomfortable in this boundary.
Correct. That's
uncomfortable.
Absolutely. That to me is more like I know we talked about this on the last time we recorded that we didn't record, but sometimes you need to apply common sense to these situations.
Yes, common sense.
Yes, exactly. If you were flirting or there seemed to be a there are certain things that you don't want to be saying or doing with someone else when you're in a committed relationship. Like that's just common sense. But just a friendship that maybe you've had, it all goes by the case. But what we're talking about here again is we're talking about, where are you leading from? Where are you coming from? Exactly. Like, are you leading from the heart, or are you leading from a place of control? And it all stems back to what is the work you can do for yourself?
Exactly. And so just because I'm going to have a moment of relatability here, this is my authentic speech, not speech, but experience. I had an insecurity. I did. I recognized that. And when I spoke it to my fiance and let them know, this is my insecurity, I'm accountable to my actions, and communicated to them that I was insecure about, whatever it was. That was a communication point where he was able to understand and not make me feel crazy and not make me feel invalidated.
Yes.
I was able to say, because I was able to recognize I have an insecurity. This is me. This isn't your actions. This isn't something you've done to me. This is a place of insecurity coming up for me. I'm uncomfortable right now. And he took the time to really, just be understanding of me and not get defensive, because that's another thing that happens. If someone's feeling vulnerable enough to be able to speak to you about something, that another person automatically feels defensive. And that's a hard position to grow from, And I've been in both positions. I've been in both positions, somebody felt insecure and I felt defensive because of my actions causing that, when really it was not actions.
Yes.
It was the situation.
Yes. That's so powerful.
Yeah.
That's so powerful. And I want to kind of wrap things up by saying this too.
Sure.
When you enter relationships from a place of heart space and connection, and you let the relationship grow naturally, I think it's way easier to be vulnerable with your partners then. But when you're entering it and from place of, I want to get a quick dopamine hit, and again, I'm not saying if you're doing these things you're bad or wrong or any of that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying this. I have been this person. I have been the person who's just done a hookup, or we've been in hookup culture, or just jumped in because I wanted a relationship and I didn't know who the other person was, or I just befriend people just because I worked with them and just blah, blah. Okay. But when you stop for a minute and actually process, what are you really doing? And does this align with your purpose? And you're listening to that gut, everything's going to work itself out. And I always believe that. And I think that's where what happened with you in finding this relationship you're in now. It's one that I hope to find as well, because I have been that person who has entered into relationships for selfish reasons. And I think we all have done that. And so
I think that's a human nature.
It is, because we are also sexual beings, and we have that need and want and all of that. But there's something deeper to it when it comes to any type of relationship, romantic or not. When you go beyond the surface level, and surface level is stuff like talking about what you like to eat and drink and your kids and your plans and that's all surface level. Yeah. But when we go deeper and we start talking about, like, what do you really want to do? In fact, I was listening to a podcast last week where it was Mel Robbins, one of my favorite podcasters. And she said, one of the things she was talking, she did an episode about when you're in your 20s. And she said, one of the things that she goes, I wish I knew, and I wish I could have, I could wrap my hands around someone, or they wrapped their hands around me and shook me in my 20s, was surround yourself with the right people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, gosh, it's so true, because if you are surrounding yourself with those people who don't have a purpose, you sometimes have to let them go so that they can find their purpose. If you string them along, you're not helping them at all.
Yeah. No, or yourself at that point.
Or yourself. So Tavi, I want to thank you for being here for us again and talking with us. I mean, I have just been writing as we've been talking and wrote down all these things, because every time we talk, I just feel like there's so many things that come out of it that I want to investigate further or want to talk about more. And I really hope that in the summer season that's coming up this season, season 4, that you'll come back on the podcast and we could talk a little more and have some more episodes together where we just either talk about a pre-planned topic or we just talk like this, because I think it really just helps. I learn so much, and I think that the viewers and the listeners do too. So I really hope you'll come back and talk again.
Oh, absolutely. I'm always honored to be a part of this with you. It's heart space energy, you know, so I'm always happy to be a part of it. And anytime we can schedule for both of us to be able to get a podcast out, I'm always happy to do so. So yes, I will absolutely make time and be a part of your podcast community with you. Thank you so much for asking.
Oh, you're welcome. And I know you have a lot of stuff coming up, right? You have some big things on the horizon. You might be teaching from your book in a teacher training type program, correct? That's coming up?
Yes.
That's great.
In a couple weeks, actually. So
wonderful.
I'm very ecstatic about that. Thank you so much. Yes.
And you have, what else do you have going on? I know that you work on something else that you're crafting originally. Oh,
yes. I actually crochet things right now. My sister-in-law passed away, and I made her a little crochet turtle, and then it turned into everybody wants a crocheted stuffed animal now. So I have been crafting crochet stuffed animals and unicorns, dinosaurs, turtles. You know, I'm expanding my knowledge.
So if somebody wants to order one of these, I'll leave a link in the notes too, in the show notes, if you want to order one of Tavi's homemade crochets. Which, by the way, you were a beginner when you first started, weren't you? You didn't know how to crochet. It just wasn't magic, right?
Yeah, no, it wasn't overnight. And the first one I made was a little bit, looking back, wonky, but. You know, I've learned a lot in that whole process, but I'm glad I did it because they came from the heart space. So
good.
They pretty cool.
Good. I'll make sure that I put that link in there for you. And I can't wait to hear how how the teaching from your book to a teacher training is going to come out. I can't wait to hear about that. So good stuff coming ahead. I'm glad.
Yeah, very excited for that opportunity as well. And I'll definitely keep you posted on it.
Wonderful. All right, everybody. Well, I hope that all of you who are listening or watching have taken something from our conversation, even if it's just one thing. Hopefully it's that word we've said a lot of today, heart space. And also, you know, taking a look back at those stopping words. That's a big deal, because when you take away those stopping words, you can operate from that heart space much more. So until next time, everybody, I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day, and continue to watch out for new episodes coming, and Tavi will be back for sure. For sure.
Absolutely. Yes. Looking forward to it. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Tavi, for coming. I appreciate it. We'll see you next time, everybody.